Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Well, thank you all so very much for making the time to hear from me today. I'm delighted to be here with you. As mentioned, I've had the pleasure of developing and launching the first public library makerspace, the FFL Fab Lab, in 2010. And have been grateful and gratified by watching this contribution in new and extraordinary ways to both the social infrastructure and learning at the community level. I will stick closely to my paper today in my 20-minute time. However, after the session in the conference, I would love to continue the discussion. My contact information will be on the final slide. In keeping with the Beyond Content theme of this gathering, I would like very much to talk with you all today about libraries, librarians, and community. Specifically, how we can simultaneously unleash and leverage the power and knowledge of the community while bringing learning, sharing, and discovery to our patrons and our staff and teams. Regardless of ever-changing and ever more complex community needs, the library remains. The library is the one place in every community where all people, regardless of age, economic, social, or educational status, can come together to think, learn, and create new knowledge. In spite of the positive and progressive proliferation of digital tools and means to find and consume information, and to connect socially, libraries remain the physical space in every community where people will find access beyond physical and digital divides to tools, content, spaces, programs, services, and most importantly, to each other as they seek, create, and share new knowledge. Transforming service models and physical spaces by first harnessing the interests and aspirations of the community through meaningful engagement and intentional innovation builds the capacity and strength of individuals and the larger community. New thinking about libraries and librarianship in the 21st century as community-led rather than library-defined is essential for our current and future libraries to continue to support and elevate the growth, health, and building of our communities. So what is our shared goal? Well, from my perspective, it's to transform existing staff into library leaders endowed with 21st century skills and empowered to both serve diverse communities and to elevate and enrich our profession. Our colleague, Dr. Dave Lankeys, in the New Librarianship Field Guide states, thus, to be a librarian is not simply about knowing how to do things, but knowing why things are done. And what underlines our knowledge-based profession is the nature of knowledge itself. The way we understand the process of becoming knowledgeable or learning affects the services we offer, the way we organize resources, the way we evaluate our performance, and ultimately, the value we provide as professionals to our communities and society as a whole. Librarians and staff must be empowered to engage in new and meaningful ways directly with the community to begin to assess and redefine what is valuable and relevant to facilitate from the library platform. Along with this new definition will emerge the pathway to a new culture. We must identify and solve equity imbalances by opening pathways of opportunity for staff throughout our organizations that will empower them and enable them to provide community-led, participatory, experiential learning through 21st century programs, services, and interactive spaces. So where do we begin? Assessment is the place to start. Organization-wide, continuous assessment of programs, services, and spaces with emphasis placed on the need to understand and measure impact of library services for reasons ranging from relevance to sustainability to funding. developing a deeper current understanding of community aspirations, trends, and needs. Not all of us have the resources to hire consultants, but all of us are in the position to participate actively in assessment, problem solving, and creating solutions. On culture, Tony Haish of Zappos, the internet shoe giant. Who knows Zappos? No? Check it out. Zappos.com, great place to buy shoes. Anyway, Tony Haish of Zappos states that if you get the culture right, everything else falls into place. Nowhere is this truer than in our libraries. Internal and external pressures on our organizations demand fundamental organizational change. In order to meet demand, we need to focus on developing the capacity of existing and future librarians and professionals to shape and reshape the organizational cultures that already exist. We cannot affect culture change if our staff members feel overwhelmed, outclassed, and unprepared to meet ever-evolving community demands. An investment must be made in upskilling existing staff. Lifelong learning. Creative lifelong learning opportunities for the community, but most importantly, for staff, not only in collections, emerging technology, programming, and leadership, but also in fast emerging areas such as coding, robotics, STEM lesson planning, teaching, as our role of community educators continues to evolve. Do it yourself, and essential skill areas that are so necessary to support the whole community, such as social work and project management. We can contribute to both the learning and well-being of the community by creating the conditions that allow the library staff to be responsive to emerging and evolving community needs by creating local agents of change. Informed, prepared, and confident to meet and exceed the community's expectations of librarians and libraries. You will be surprised by the diversity and richness of the interests and skills of the staff beyond the MLIS and what they can contribute to the community. Rebranding ourselves for community-based librarianship. Librarians as community catalysts. Staff become designers and facilitators of innovative, data-driven community services. Libraries become the platform for traditional services, emerging services, civil discourse, and discovery. Specific, non-traditional training that will prepare our staff for community librarianship might include, but not limited to, appreciative inquiry, design thinking, public speaking, responsive space design, and of course, assessment. Everybody participates in assessment. It is not a top-down activity. An example, let's consider spaces. Some questions to ask ourselves. How are existing spaces serving current community needs? Are librarians and staff accessible to the community? Do we continue to use desks to separate us from those we serve? Do we evaluate not only the attendance for programs and scheduled events, but do we take a deep dive into assessing how the spaces are utilized, for what purposes, by whom, when, and how? Ultimately, you may find that you do have the space to introduce participatory experiential learning into your existing spaces without renovation costs involved. Allow the staff the time and the freedom to respond to community needs by prioritizing their time to come together and think together about how to leverage existing resources, including space, to bring new opportunity through the library platform to the community. Open your doors to not only community input, but to substantial, meaningful community participation. The Abundant Community, a profound little book written by John McKnight and Peter Block, suggests Every community already has what it needs within the community. This is so important, I think I'll say it again. Every community already has what it needs within the community. This simple idea suggests to me that we not only have the responsibility to reach out, identify, and leverage community knowledge, expertise, skills, and passion, but to bring that wondrous diversity and variety of learning and sharing to the community, by the community, through the library. Consider, community members are also teachers, designers, engineers, experts and enthusiasts related to computers, inventors, crafters, sewers, knitters, upcyclers, boaters, skiers, dog trainers, retirees, teachers, parents, teenagers, the list goes on. A re-envisioning of volunteer to community participant. At the FFL, I had the opportunity to create a new volunteer form and model based on the ideas of McKnight and Block to begin to tap into the community and discover the talent and the interests that lie therein. Questions for the community participant forum do not focus on what you can do for the library, but rather inspired questions, including how can the library help you to share your passions, interest, and expertise and knowledge with the community. All it takes is 3 simple questions. What do you love to do? What are you passionate about? And are you willing to share your time, knowledge, and expertise with the community and your neighbors? Meaningful participation contributes to a sense beyond belonging, but an ownership of the success and well-being and building of the community. Through this shift, the role of librarians and staff become one of true facilitators. Consider, in a recent Guardian article, Tim Coates talks about the public library closing across Britain. He states, there's now an idea of reliance on voluntary staff due to budget cuts because the decline in use has been going on for over 20 years, since long before the cuts in funding started, and no one in the government or the library profession or sector has taken the action needed to improve. People certainly want public libraries, but not in the way they are operated at present. We need a whole change of management. Coates goes on to say, the US and Australia show increased use and popularity of their traditional public libraries, so it cannot be true to say that changing technology or changing society have caused the decline. If the service is not used, it's only reasonable for taxpayers to pay less. So let's turn this on its head and let's assume abundance in our communities. Let's commit to creating the conditions that allow neighbors to share and create new knowledge with their neighbors. How? By facilitating success through support, space, resources, and time for community participants so they can successfully share directly with the community. Imagine the wide and wondrous diversity beyond jewelry making, computers, fabrication, digital design. Imagine the sheer numbers of enthusiasts and experts in more topic areas than we can possibly imagine, who are thrilled to have the opportunity to share what they know and love with their neighbors. Traditional scheduled programs are an essential responsibility of libraries. However, creating thoughtful spaces and environments that allow for the community to define how they will utilize spaces and what they would like to do, achieve, and create in those spaces is the key to library transformation and long-term relevance and sustainability. Our traditional model puts the librarian at the center of creation, learning, and programming. It is neither possible nor ideal for library offerings to be limited by the capacity, expertise, and skills of the staff. opening the door to the community, allowing for all of the diversity and unique skills and interests that exist outside the library doors, will yield limitless possibilities, a new sense of ownership by the community, and a change in community perception of the value and impact of the library. Lifelong learning opportunities for staff led by community participants that support creation might include sewing, coding, 3D printing, computer-assisted design, video and music production, teaching. Staff can develop and master new skills and gain new confidence, all cost-effectively facilitated by members of the community. Librarians and staff report that they are intimidated, overworked, overwhelmed by the idea of having to master disruptive technologies, learning and adding new skills to an already overfilled plate of responsibilities. As noted in a recent American Libraries article, Other Duties as Assigned, Graham Tedesco Blair, in an interview with Ann Ford, states plainly, "You have to do the job that is there, not the one that exists in your head. We are here to serve the community, and what they need is what we're going to do." In The Deskless Library by Nancy Malone Hill, Hill notes, "We are beginning to acknowledge the shift in expectations of users. We're beginning to dismantle barriers to service, including the removal of service desks, and we are cross-training and empowering staff. Through assessment, reality is that 90% of reference questions can be answered at circulation. Imagine the creativity and innovation that can come from librarians when their time is not being spent on directional or ready reference questions." Within and in support of our evolving new culture, let's write job descriptions that support the diversity and creativity and unique skills of staff and encourage them to reach beyond the job description in their efforts to serve the community. Most importantly, give them the latitude, training, support, and encouragement necessary to do so. On democracy and social infrastructure. Tommy Laisio, Helsinki Executive Director for Culture and Leisure, states in the New York Times, "We often think that things like social cohesion or democracy are just words, but in spaces like these, libraries, they really come to life." Eric Kleinenberg, author of Palaces for the People, in an interview with Brendan Dowling for Public Libraries magazine on social infrastructure. "I use the concept social infrastructure to refer to the places and organizations that shape the way we interact. The notion is that we invest in social infrastructure. If we build it well, if we maintain it, we make it more likely that people will have pleasant and recurrent interactions with friends and also strangers. If those interactions happen enough, they develop into relationships and sometimes even community. But also, if we do not invest in social infrastructure, if we let it fall apart and get degraded, then we are more likely to become isolated. And this is the paradigmatic case, a library. Libraries are essential. It's not just the physical space that matters, it's also the people who work at libraries and make them function. The public service work that librarians do is essential to democracy. For many individuals, it can mean the difference between success and failure, or even life and death. Nothing demonstrates this idea more than the equalizing effect that maker and participatory efforts have in libraries. My experience has indeed taught me that the power of making is social, far beyond the more obvious and measurable technological impact. Libraries are the one place in every community where all are equal. All are welcome, and all share the expectation of equal access to content, services, spaces, programs, learning, and support. My experience has also taught me that the single most powerful and unique impact of the public library is in our singular ability to level the playing field for all citizens, to claim a place of belonging, and to experience a common humanity, regardless of socioeconomic, educational, or other aspects that affect acceptance and participation in the larger community. And most importantly, libraries are by, for, and of the people. Thank you.